My name's Dan. I'm one of the head roasters at Moonrise Coffee. I started off working in hospitality. I did an espresso course for 2 days in Auckland. And from that 2-day course, I realized, oh, coffee is actually cool. Like, I didn't really enjoy the taste before. I used it more as a caffeine spike to keep myself going, but seeing how coffee is made, how it's processed, a lot of the detail behind it, that actually spiked a bit of interest. So after a bit of traveling, I was able to work in a cafe in Auckland, in like an art center cafe, and working more as a food runner, but then I was able to then take a bit of barista role here and there, learning from the head barista. And I knew that coffee was kind of the thing that I wanted to do. So once I got back to the UK, I was like, get my mindset, work in a cafe, gain more knowledge and understand how to make coffee more efficiently. The position at Moonroast arose where they were looking for their first member of staff. And I thought, why not just put everything into what I've just said and head back from Fran the next day. So I thought I'd come and check it out. And then it kind of stemmed from there. Originally, I was doing more packing and training. And I've grown over the years as the business has grown to be more of a roaster. I've really enjoyed what roasting coffee is like, and I've tried to stay true to keep with the consistency and the quality and consistency high, which is difficult to do, but with processes and understanding, it makes it a lot easier. Over the years, we've really developed how we roast our coffee from a bit more of a darker sense, especially when specialty coffee was new and Hampshire was quite low in terms of the roasteries and the cafes. But now we've gone to a nice lighter sense that still has traditional body, but a lot of brightness and sweetness. So now we're bringing in better coffees at higher grades and showcasing them, and we've got a bigger core kind of audience. Moonrise has been, very slow, very methodical, like thought it through, tried to, not expand too quickly, otherwise you can burn out and lose kind of the character of what it is. And I've just been quite fortunate to kind of ride that wave, grow with the company and decide where that company wants to go as well. So it's been quite good, been side by side with Fran, and now we're a team of 10, but we've got some really amazing individuals that we work with, and all of them kind of understand what we're doing in terms of pushing specialty coffee to not just the nerds, the geeks, but everyone. And it's just good to be along for the ride. A couple of years ago, I was able to spend a week out in Uganda, which was hosted by the importers that import some specialty Ugandan coffee, as well as some other East African coffees. They're called Amwani. They're based up in York, so really good guys. Then took the whole flight to Amsterdam and down to Rwanda, then jumped up to Uganda with the guys. So it's good to go with some like-minded people. There was 9 or 10 total people, and they're all from different roasteries. So it's showing these UK roasters, what coffee is from Uganda and how it's grown and produced. Amwani work with a processing mill who buys coffee from the farmers. So they're called AgriVolve. So we saw their new processing facilities, and it was great to, as a roaster, see how coffee is processed, because I do so many roastery tours and explanations on training courses of how coffee is processed, but actually seeing it in person has really helped understand the difference between natural and washed, and what a coffee cherry actually is in your hands, because we get the green coffee, so it's before that. My favorite process kind of differs. Every coffee is quite different, and you could get an Ethiopian coffee that you process naturally washed, anaerobic, carbonic, and they all have different flavors. It's really good for us to showcase. We currently have a what we call Ethiopia Trio, because we have 3 different Ethiopias which have different processes. And I think it's key for us to showcase that to customers, not just to sell the product, but to showcase what each process is and how it differs in terms of flavor. I tend to go for like a really bright, clean style natural. They're harder to find, but when you get them right, it's kind of like tasting Ribena. So when I've done training courses here, I can really go deep. I love explaining about the different processes of what's happening during the roast, but I can see sometimes it kind of glazes over. So we're trying to make specialty coffee a little bit more approachable and understandable to not just the nerds, but to everyday people. There's quite a big process into how to get the best out of a certain coffee. The first thing we look at is what end result do we want and how do we get there? And it's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of tasting, but then we try one roaster, try another, see how it is, try different developments, and then it's trying to come to that end taste. But getting to end taste is quite difficult, and sometimes we get a coffee and it tastes, let's say, 80% good, but it's really hard to get those extra 2%, 3%, 4%. So we do find a profile that is easy to replicate. So then we're able to consistently get that same roast, because we could have one roast that is like perfect on the espresso machine. It's like a god shot, but it's gonna be really hard to replicate that roast style every time. So it's finding something that is easier for us to manage. So then every customer that gets that Brazil from month 1 to month 3 should taste the same. We're quite fortunate that we've got 2 quite big different roasters. One of them is a Probat traditional drum roaster. That's kind of like a tumble dryer, but with a flame underneath. So it's more traditional in terms of flavor, a lot more bassy, weighty, earthy notes, roasty characteristics, kind of common coffee flavors will come out using the Probat, more conduction style roasting. And then we have the Loring, which is more of a hot air roaster, kind of like using a hairdryer, putting that through a drum. So that brings out a lot more kind of clarity, brightness, sweetness, less roastiness. So we're quite fortunate that we can stick with one green coffee bean and treat it through different roasters, and we can get different flavor profiles.
Am I right in thinking that you'd rather have a consistently 90% result like all the time?
Yeah, I feel like only a few people are going to taste that extra 5% if you roasted it to that 5%, because we've got a product that then has to be extracted. It has to go through another process, which is extraction either through espresso machine or filter, and most of the time it's not in our hands. So we have to make the best that we can to be consistent, so it's got a wide range of extraction times in case the barista finds it difficult to dial in. There's so many variables in extracting coffee, and roasting is the same as extracting a coffee through an espresso machine. It's all about playing with those variables, and if you try and stick to those variables, you should get the same end result. So as a roaster, we're doing the same as a barista, but just in a different sense. All you see on kind of social media and online is just somebody standing next to a roaster, but there is a lot more to it, and it's sometimes hard for a person, if they want to be a roaster, what that job entails without seeing it. Day to day, it involves a lot of lifting, a lot of scheduling of what you need to be roasted either for the day, or you might be a roastery a little bit bigger where you've got to have a certain amount of par stock. So it really depends on the size of the business, what that roaster has to do in terms of how much and when. For me, it's eyeballing what is currently happening in dispatch, what the guys need, and when to roast it. Now, there are a lot more sophisticated systems out there where they'll look at exactly every order that comes in, and then you get a report. And that's where kind of every business will differ. It's a production job, but there's a lot around it with tasting the coffees, and the coffee that you're roasting is going out to cafes and restaurants who are going to do it well, and people are going to buy it for home use as well, so enjoying the coffee. If you are interested in roasting, definitely try and get into a roastery and just have a chat.